Yeah, hello all. Welcome to the session. Let's wait for a couple of more minutes for people to join. And hope you guys can hear me and see the screen. Please confirm in the chat. Yeah, great, Anand. Thanks for confirming. Just wait for 2 more minutes. We'll start at 8:02. Um, Also, please do let me know if you have any doubts in the syllabus part or any topics you want to cover. So just let me know. And if not, we will proceed further. Okay. So yeah. Okay, so it's already time. So let's start the demo session day two. So once again, welcome to the session, guys. So let me go briefly through the once again through this general information. So the first three sessions will be for free, right? So from the fourth session, the Zoom meeting link will be changed, and only for the paid candidates it will be sent. Okay. And the first two recordings will be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So yesterday's one will be already there, and today's one will also be available there. And the third one, and from that till end of the sessions, will be available in the portal. Okay. So yeah, yesterday I shown you the portal, so it's the same. You just log in and go to your courses. It will be available. Okay. And please don't do any batch shifting or there is no refund either. And this is the WhatsApp chat or WhatsApp community. And what's that? Okay, so I will put that link later. Okay, so okay, yeah, it's there. I'm sure it's one sec. Yeah, great. So this is the WhatsApp community link. Okay, and again, put it in the chat. So, and the support team is available from Monday to Saturday between 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. IST. Okay, so this is their contact details and the mail ID. So please do drop in any email regarding your technical doubts or any payment related recording issues, anything you can reach out to them. They will be assisting you during this time frame. Okay, so let me start the session. And these are all the social media links, by the way. Yeah, so the bit NY site is not working, so that's the thing. So just use this link. Right. So before proceeding with the booting process, so firstly we must understand what is virtualization and what is containers, right? So containerization and why it's been used for like many years, right? So why it's been around and what is the main reason still it's been used, right? So virtualization has been there for almost like 20 years and still it's been relevant and it solves a lot of issues. So what is that? Firstly, we need to understand what is virtualization, right? So in those early or late 90s, okay, so like just the birth of the internet era, the thing is that there used to be a lot of servers, but the issue is each server issue like there is a resource constraint. Okay, so means let's say it will be like let me open the performance. So it will be like there will be a bottleneck with the CPU or memory. So what is a bottleneck is there will be a limitation of CPU and which might not be compatible with memory. So the memory would be very high and CPU would be very low. So it doesn't match, right? So there is a that's called as bottleneck, and it will be always higher in the threshold, or the usage will be very high, and it's an issue, right? So let's not get too technical into that one. So the issue what they used to face, right? So there used to be very less application, but the applications which used to have a lot of or consume a lot of resources, system resources, right? So the issue which they used to face is, let's say one application is running in one server, only that application can run, right? So due to the resource limitation, and the let's say it is not effectively utilizing the CPU. Let's say it is not a CPU intensive process. Even your Google Chrome or any such a browser, it doesn't consume a lot of CPU, but it runs solely through your memory, right? So similarly, your in those days, it is like only one application used to run, and the remaining resources are not being utilized effectively while that application was running. So that is a huge issue, and there was a OS constraint also, right? Like there used to be very less market during those times, right? So the thing is that only such, let's say Dynatrace for an example, and I'm not sure why I'm taking Dynatrace as a common tool for all the examples, but that's fine. It is a monitoring tool and it is a very intensive process. It consumes a lot of system resources. Okay. So this is running in that particular server. Only that will be running for the entirety of the server. So it is literally dedicated for that. So which is fine, but it is a huge issue with the business end, right? So they need to spend a lot of servers just to run some other softwares, let's say HTTP software or HTTP server, right? So like that, they need to spend a lot. So instead, why can't we club both together? And while Dynatrace is running, let's say HTTP needs only CPU and very less memory, then it can collide, right? But there might be a OS constraint. So that's where your virtualization is there, right? So it is to avoid this bridge, right? So there is a silver lining between this one, and it can be merged together, right? So that's the whole point of virtualization, is to virtually use all your resources for some other operating system running on top of your operating system, right? So which means this is our Windows machine, right? But here I'm using a Linux machine, right? So it's as simple as that nowadays. But those days it is a very revolutionary thing because VMware is the one which pioneered that one. And yeah, so let me just quickly give a diagram how it works. Okay, so firstly, my base OS is Windows 11, let's say, or Windows 10. And on top of that, what I did install, it is VMware Workstation, as a simple application. So what it does the virtualization. Right? So virtualization, and it does one important thing. It is called as a resource share. So what does that mean? As we just now mentioned, like it is nothing but sharing all the system resources, which are CPU, memory, GPU, hard disk, and network, right? So, and much more than that based on your requirement, but this is the common one. Okay. So these are all the system resources which will be shared throughout your VM. Okay. So now, so how it can be compatible? And now you might ask, there is a concept called as dual boot, right? So, which means simultaneously you can install Windows as well as Linux in the same machine. But the issue with that one is you cannot run both at the same time. Either you can run Windows 11 or RHEL or any other operating system. At least only one can be run at the same time because it need to load all the drivers. and the whole settings, everything will be differing, right? So the even the booting procedure itself will be differing based on the requirement. So the point is you can have dual boot, but this is a totally different thing altogether, right? So that's the point, and that's where VMware succeeded in the virtualization, right? So yeah, now on top of this virtualization only you install yeah RHEL 8 or 9, any version, it doesn't matter. You installed a full-fledged ISO or an image, and on top of that only you install your application. So it can be any up, it is an application layer, okay? Any application you want, you can run. So the best thing about this one is you can simply send this whole thing or this particular thing as an image to your colleague, right? So let's say a new joinee onboarded to your team. So simply you can send this as an ISO to him, and the basic requirement for your project is satisfied, right? So simply with this ISO, he can uh, like he will get all the softwares which is being used in the company, right? So that's the point of virtualization, and why still it's relevant, because that's what, like, you can run multiple applications at the same time, and you can even run multiple operating systems. There is no limitation either, right? So you can even run a Mac OS on top of a Windows or anything, right? So even ESXi, which is VMware vSphere inside a VMware workstation, that is also possible, right? So that's your virtualization, and why there is a need for containerization, or what is the urge that many companies switching to containers is. So firstly, we need to understand what went wrong or what is a hurdle with the VMware, right? So it's not a hurdle, by the way, but Docker or the containers that do the same task in an effective way, right? So it's exactly the same concept, but the point is the same virtualization, but here it works in a bit different way. And one more thing is it uses very less system resources compared to a full-fledged operating system. So here we are literally installing a full-fledged OS here, right? That's an issue which previously VMware did solve, right? So what is the point of installing a VMware is to use the system resources effectively, but compared to Docker, this kind of looks like a old school. It's so because you're having a full-fledged OS just to run one HTTP server, which is fine, but it in terms of optimal performance, this is not a great thing, right? So that's the issue which Docker resolves in a very effective way. So we will see that. So, and one more thing is the um, like let's say, as I mentioned, a new person onboarded to the project, easily you can send a Docker image, right? So or Docker image link rather than an full-fledged ISO. So let's say this is the size of a OS as well as some softwares. At least it will be 20 gigs. Okay, so at least 10 plus gigs, right? So whereas here it will be a mere 1 gig, maximum of 1 gig it will be. Okay, so yeah, you can see the size difference and compatibility is also there. So again, let me just quickly give a base OS, same Windows 11 we can take, and we have a tool called as Docker. So many might already know. If you are not familiar with that, Docker is nothing but a containerization tool. Okay, so let me go to the site hub.docker.com. Yeah, so this is the tool which kind of revolutionized the modern or even Web3 uses this one. Okay, so what is the fuzz is all about, right? So firstly, you have the same concept as a virtualization. You have multiple images. Let's say this. Let me take let's say MySQL. Okay, so instead of having an operating system on top of that installing a MySQL, you see there is an Debian OS, right? So on top of that, I'm installing a MySQL. Instead of that, right away, what if I can run a MySQL in my Docker? Docker for Windows. right? So it's like just like a VMware workstation, but also uses the virtualization. But in this case, there is one more tool in between, which is called as Docker engine, and which does a lot of heavy lifting that it makes sure this image is compatible with this base OS. Okay, so instead of having a full-fledged OS, this is the lightweight OS out there. And there is one more OS which is called as Alpine, right? So this is the most lightweight OS out there, which is just you see, it's just 5 MB. Okay, and if you install, it will be maximum of 100 to even 200 MB based on your requirement. So the point is, you're having a OS which just need or it just has the basic requirement to run a particular tool. Let's take Grafana, which is again a monitoring tool exactly like your Dynatrace, right? So what Grafana also has in background, there would be a OS, right? So without an OS, any tool doesn't exist. But it is a very lightweight OS which does resolve only or which has only this tool. So the remaining, let's say here it is around, we ourselves installed around 10 gigs, the OS, right? So whereas here, the OS itself is like, let's say that image, it's like 300 MB or something, which is far, like it's like a 1/10 of it, right? So that's the thing of that's the best thing of Docker or containers. And one more thing is you can push or pull your um, container, right? So firstly, this is an image, and we are yet to create a container on top of this image. So what is a container now, right? So let me quickly do this image of let's say anything you can take. So let's say Grafana itself, or let's take the same HTTP. Even that is there. All the famous tools you have, right? You can name it, it will be here, right? So it should be here. Yeah, HTTP link. Here you see Alpine, right? So not only this, many such tools use Alpine as a default Linux OS. Okay, so here we are installing HTTP. I'm just giving a vague number. It will be less than this 300 MB, and it need to resolve the libraries, right? So libraries as well as the drivers required for that tool or that image, right? So all these need to be resolved. For that, you have a thing called as container. So simply just like that, you cannot use this image. So you need to build a container which solves all the dependencies, okay, which is libraries and drivers. And what is a library in general or a driver, right? So it is a supporting tool for HTTP to running fine, right? So which means you have, let's say, device manager. You take any such hardware tool, let's say my disk drives. So in like let's say this driver is not available means my SSD doesn't work. Similar thing with my Bluetooth or anything. Without this Bluetooth driver, it doesn't work, right? So it acts as a middleman. Exactly like that, you have libraries and drivers, which is required for this HTTP. So that's the container, and you can compare container with the compressed files, okay? Or it's like a zip file. You can send it to any one of your colleague, or you can even upload it to here. And you can even make it offline, right? So only the people who have access to that link can download it. Anything you can do, okay? So that's a good thing, which like just one image you can use, right? So let's say I want to have one more HTTP server, just like that we can have. Whereas here, you need to make sure it is like you need to create one more ISO, right? So which is bit annoying, and you need to spend a lot of resource, right? So that's the thing. And it's not the best thing that only containers are being used. So in your the best practice in your companies is getting the best of both, right? So virtualization as well as containerization, it is getting best of all these two, right? So yeah, so that's your difference between virtualization and containers. Okay, fine. So let me move on to the slides. So what is a booting process or why it is an important thing for us is certain, right? So, and firstly, this is a very common question in the interviews for a very long time, right? So why? Because you are the one who can diagnose if something went wrong in the server. Let's say if the server was normal and after a patching or any such basic activity like service stop, service start, and rebooted, the server didn't came back. So what went wrong in between, right? So you should be the in a position to understand or diagnose, like if it is a hardware failure, like you will be. It's not like you will be in a black box and you don't know any such like it's like randomly it doesn't reboot, right? So there will be some reason, and you should be in a position to understand the logs, right? So that's so important, and where it was stuck, right? So it is stuck in any one of the spaces. So we will be seeing all the things. So booting process. So yeah, and the session might be a bit long today also, at least 10 minutes longer. So please, yeah, please be there. So let me take my, uh, just to give you a basic idea about what is a motherboard. Okay, so it's not, I don't want to bore you with all the hardware features. Okay, so just to give a basic idea what goes in the motherboard, and it's exactly like this motherboard in your production servers. Okay, so it's not a different thing. Okay, so let me, I'm not getting a. Okay, this should be fine. So firstly, you are having a CPU and there is a two bridge. Okay, so it's a north bridge and south bridge. And you have CPU and this is where your memory slots are inserted. And this is where your cables are connected, which is your power cable for your motherboard. So why these all are important? So there can be an alert that okay there is a CPU fan is not running or some hardware issue, right? So you should be in a position to at least understand okay it went wrong, right? So that's the thing. So at least have a basic idea about okay what are all the main components which goes to which goes in the background, right? So in your motherboard, right? So firstly CPU, and this is where your memory slots or DIMM slots. Okay, there by default there will be four, and in some memory intensive or memory required servers, it will be eight slots will be there, and this is called as PCIe slots. Okay, so there is uh, so in this case there is around six slots, right? So you can use this for your graphics card, also your sound card, network card. It's like a very common interface, just like your pen drive, right? So we use that a lot. Exactly like that. PCA slots has been there for quite some time, and it's been common for almost every basic requirements. Okay, and yeah, so this black thing which you don't see, right? So this is called as your SATA. Okay, so SATA drives, and where you're connecting your hard disk and SSD. So if you're very new to IT, what is an SSD and HDD? So both are first thing storage, solid state file. HDDs are disk file. Okay, so both is a storage, and which one is faster? Obviously, SSD is faster because there is no moving parts. SSD is like a huge. It's not huge, by the way. Nowadays, you have NVMe SSD out there. And yeah, let me show you the one which currently it's been running. It is A data Falcon, right? So this is an SSD which I'm using. It's very small. In these images, it might look a huge one, but it's very small, trust me. Okay, so and it is using the interface is a bit different compared to your a typical SSD or HDD. Okay, so it's a M.2 NVMe SSD. Okay, so again coming back to your this one motherboard, you have the VRAMs are here, and there is a heat shield on top of that. Your CPU need to be cooled. There will be a CPU cooler. Those are all not that important, but the basic concepts or sorry, basic components are important, right? So that's the one. And what else we have? Yeah, this is your CMOS battery, and that's it, right? So that's the basic thing we have in the motherboard. At least, like there is a lot, but at least the basic components we did cover. Okay, so here is where you connect all your like your cabinet, sound card, and those things where these pins will be used. Okay, so and these are all your IO, right? So moving forward, let me show you the first booting process, which is your BIOS. So what is BIOS, right? So, but before that, what we first thing we do in our system, it is to turn on the machine, right? So once you press the power button, what that only actually I did shown that one. So power on or off, if you press, there is one action or one set of steps will be performed, which is called as post. So what is post? Power on, self test. So again, what does that mean? So it will perform or it will send a small ampere of current to all the components, right? So that's fine. But let's say you accidentally mounted or you didn't mounted correctly a memory slot, sorry, memory, right? So memory unit as well as GPU or your CPU is not compatible with this motherboard, right? So all these are hardware issue, which even your system did, as of now is not even turned on, right? So, but before turning on itself, you had this issues, right? And there is actually, you cannot see now, but there is one thing called as the debug LEDs here. Okay. So debug LED, MSI, pictures. Yeah, this is the one, right? So there is four LEDs. So if something went wrong in your CPU, memory, or your graphics, right? So this will be, you can see an amber light there. So which means something is not compatible while the machine is turning on, or you didn't had a right configuration. Something went wrong. Okay, so before even booting, right? So once everything is right, then it will move to the next phase, which is what the BIOS phase. Okay, and BIOS, what is full form? Basic input output system. Okay, so BIOS, basic input output system, and from the name itself, you can understand it is like having the BIOS of MSI motherboard. So why I'm taking MSI a lot, because this system itself is an MSI system. So yeah, that's the reason I'm taking yeah, I see MSI motherboard. Okay, so yeah, but it's the same you see in your any such boards. It is the same. Okay. Yeah, so this is the BIOS in my system. I do see. So what is this, by the way? So you see, this is okay. So it is flashing this one. So let me get fine. So let's stick with this one. So it does have all the basic information, like what is the speed at which your CPU is running, your memory is running, and the basic system information, right? So your CPU info, memory info, and the BIOS version. And the most important one in this whole BIOS screen itself is your boot priority order. So you see this list, right? So it's like deciding which one to be booted first, as simple as that. And this is the only screen where you have a choice to select it. Okay. So that's this boot priority order. And firstly, not only that, you can even do the overclocking. So that's the screen which you are seeing, it is popping, right? It's nothing but overclocking. What is again a overclocking? Just to summarize, it's nothing but increasing the speed of at which your hardware is running. Let's say my CPU is, this is my base speed, by the way. So I can even increase till 4 gigs or 4 gigahertz. So which means it's the frequency, right? So my voltage will be higher, and I can fully use the potential of this CPU, right? So like that, you have a you can increase the speed of your memory, right? So mine is again a stock speed. So it's like tuning your car, right? So exactly like that, you can tune your systems based on your requirement. Again, it depends on whether it is allowed, because in Intel CPUs, some CPUs it doesn't allow. Okay, so that's the thing. Since mine is AMD, it does allow. So yeah. Fine. So that's this one and the boot priority order. And just with BIOS, we can take like 2 hours or even 4 hours session. If that many informations are there, I'm just toning it down just to give the basic information which is needed, right? So yeah, boot priority order. And in this order, it is HDD, SSD, and your CD or DVD drive, and your network boot, right? So you might see this one. So let's say you selected hard disk, right? So the next one, which is you might never see this one in any of the booting process or such. It is called as the partition style, and it is NBR. So what is an NBR? So full form is master boot record. Okay, and you have one more thing called as GPT. So again, what is that? GPT full form is GUID partition table. Okay, so these two are the partition style. So why this is an important one, and like what effective it will be, or sorry, how effective it is for a sysadmin? Because firstly, it doesn't matter. Okay, so it can be either GPT or MBR. uh, for any end user, it does the same thing. But as a sysadmin, sometimes, again, it's not for any, like every system. Some systems does need GPT, which is the latest one compared to NDR. And the easiest example is GPT is where your Windows or Microsoft is pushing GPT from very long time. And MBR means it is for all the other like non-Windows. Okay, so you can call it like that. So your Linux or your Mac OS is also uses MBR. So now, what is the whole purpose of MBR and GPT? Right. So let's quickly see this one. So just go to your disk management and right click in the properties of your disk volume. So you see the partition style. So what it does. So as okay, I didn't mention, right? So any such data you store in uh, your hard disk or SSD, it doesn't matter, right? So it is nothing but a block devices, and it will be stored as a blocks. Okay. So now what is the thing, right? So let me quickly give a hard disk, just a basic idea how a hard disk stores, right? So you have a lot of indentation. So each data, right? So let's say, oh, sorry, let me get a good image. So each, let's say you store a document or a movie or something. So it will be stored as this 1 and 0. For us, it is just a document, but the machine does read it as a huge array of ones and zeros, right? Now, the thing is that it is again a millions of ones and zeros form a block, right? So, and that block, and again, a huge array of blocks forms a sector. And there is one thing called as tracks. So, again, this is now you might ask, okay, SSD, there is this doesn't matter, right? So I just shown you the SSD which I use. So that's what, like, it doesn't have the same thing, right? So there is no disk itself. It is just a simple chip like this. But the point is, the concept wise, it does the same thing. So it also stores as a block, and the concept will never change, and it's never changed for quite a long time, right? So the point is, you have multiple blocks, right? And in order to categorize it, okay, um, let's say you turn on your machine, right? So it need to automatically identify, okay, this is the boot sector, right? So there will be a lot of sectors. Let me go to paint, right? So like this, lot of sectors will be there. And which would be the boot sector? And there is one more thing called as tracks, like this. It will be okay. So based on the requirement and usage, you have a lot of tracks. So now, which one is the boot sector? Let's say this is the one. So your IO head, which is this one, it need to identify it, right? So that's where this MBR and GPT is for. So it need to categorize all this sector, and there is a thing called as primary partition and extended partition. Okay, so as of now, it is MBR can have four primary partition. Okay, whereas GPT, which is the latest one, it can do 128 primary partitions. So you see the huge difference, right? So there is a behemoth difference. It is there. So just four, it does allow. Here it is 128, but now you may ask, okay, how about fifth partition? So it will automatically, the fourth one will be called as logical partition, and we'll be using that. So this one extensively we'll see later. Okay, so as of now, it might be a vague explanation of this partition style because it needs some explanation. Okay, but at the end of the day, even as a sysadmin, you might not care too much about this one because by default in Linux, it is MBR. By default in Windows, it is GPT. So without your choice, again, it's not like, okay, in Windows, can I use MBR? Obviously, yes, you can use. And same thing in Linux, you can use GPT. You see, convert to MBR disk. Okay, so you can use, but again, it's not recommended by even Windows doesn't recommend it too much. Okay, so that's the one. Now moving on. So let's say you figured out the boot sector, right? So that's your MBR. What is there in the boot sector? Your grub. So now what is a grub screen, right? Firstly, what is grub? It is called as Grand Unified Bootloader. Now what is that? Because we are yet to see that one, right? And the same bootloader concept is there in your any device, your IoT device from that till your the most sophisticated device, even that will have the grub screen. What is that? It is to choose which one to be booted next. As I mentioned a while ago, you have a dual boot. So this screen is actually your grub screen, right? So you need to choose between either you want to boot to Windows or RHEL. Like that, let's say you are having multiple OS in the same disk. You have one particular disk. Inside you have, let's say, Windows, Linux, and even Mac OS in some cases, right? So you can boot at least one only, right, at the same time. So that's where, like, this is the screen where you choose it. So which is Windows 11, RHEL, and let's say you are booting to a RHEL, and in the screen, how it looks like, right? So let me show you here. Yeah. Yeah. So you might have seen this kind of blue color screen. Right. So this is for an Android emulator. So you see Android x86 and Windows. So obviously, by default, those two doesn't go together, but in the same disk, it is configured. So that's the reason you have both. Not only that, you might have seen this if you ever used Ubuntu. You have Ubuntu as well as Windows Boot Manager. So like that, in your Windows, you have like this, right? So, and the best thing is you can have the same OS again twice. So you have Windows 11. Again, you can have Windows 11 if it is existing in the same disk, right? So that's the thing. You need to choose which one to be booted next. That's what called as bootloader. And even in your Android phone, your iPhone, any such device has bootloader. Okay. So once you decided, okay, let me go with this one, right? So this one, and the next one is your kernel. So kernel and why kernel is important and what it does, right? So that's what uh, we need to see. And yeah, let me quickly explain. So firstly, before that, we need to see this one. And as I mentioned yesterday, Linus Torvalds came up with the kernel, right? So what is a kernel exactly? So it is like a heart of your system, and it does all the heavy lifting, like uh, figuring out your disk management, right? So managing your drivers and like let's say disk management, process everything what we saw in the roadmap yesterday, right? All that is being performed only in that kernel. Okay, so it's that important. It does disk management, process, and the driver management. Okay, so again, all your basic system information and how your system behaves, right? So all that also kernel manages. So that's the thing which he came up with from a again an open source software which is using Minix. So again, all these Linux, Minix or Solaris, all are based on Unix, which is the um, base OS. Okay, so from that, these are all derived, and you see the contributors, right? So these many people came together and still it's been updated. You see, it's like updated every now and then. Not only one documentation or something, all the files is updated every now and then, which is a great thing. This repo is alive, right? So, and it's still serving the purpose. And just you can pull this repo, and if you're smart enough to create your own UI, UX, and your package management, literally you can create your own operating system. Okay, so it's not that easy, just to put it in words, but point is you can, right? So that's the thing which even Red Hat done, and many companies emerged from this one. Okay, so yeah, this is the kernel. You see Linux kernel source code, and you see like yeah, these many commits are there. Okay, so yeah, and he's the guy who came up with the version control, Git. So the source of this GitHub is Git, and even he's the one who came up with this version control, right? So yeah, just because to manage this one, right? So many people came up, and let's say if this guy is editing this one file, the same file has been edited by someone. There should be some versioning or version control, right? So that's where Git emerged, right? So yeah, right. So that's your kernel. And there we will discuss about the kernel a lot later. Okay, so we have a kernel panic, how it works, how to diagnose that, right? So all that we'll discuss later. And as I mentioned, it is the most important one, kernel. Okay. So how about the next one? And we are almost there. Okay. So init and run level both are mostly same. Okay. So yeah, you'll see both. And lastly, your lock screen. Okay. So now what is init? Init level or init code, you can call anything. So what is that? Let me show you that. This is the init levels. So as of now, it might sound vague, but the point is, if you type init 0, it will initiate the shutdown process or sequence. If you type init 1, it will directly go to the single user mode. So if we have all this run level as a default one, it will be performing it. Okay. So, and the default one is init 3 and 5. So let me quickly type what it is. Init 0, it's shut down. And there is an equivalent to this one in your Windows, which is called as system config. You might have been to this screen before. If not, this is a system configuration. And if I check the safe boot, I have an option or a radio button to boot to a minimal boot, which means it doesn't even have network. Okay, so minimal means it does have all the basic OS softwares. It doesn't include like this third party softwares. Only your OS softwares, and network also doesn't or it doesn't load the network driver also. And you have one more interesting option, which is no GUI boot. Okay, so if you check this and apply, literally what it will become. Can someone put it in the chat? What is a no GUI boot means? What is the other interface? Yesterday we did discuss that. Anyone? What is the two interfaces? One is this one, GUI boot. The other one, CLI, exactly. So it will be a CLI or MS-DOS. Okay, so that's the one. So exactly similar to this one, we have this init levels. So init 0 and init 1. So what is init 1? That is an interesting one, which is called a single user mode. Why they call like that? They call it like that, or it is again called as emergency mode. What is that? So basically, if you have this VMware, right? So in this VM, I am the single user. Means I have all the liberty to edit any resources, or this is the console of it. So I can start, stop, restart, power on, all this I can do, right? So like only in the console if you do have it, and only I have the access to my system, right? So like it's not for anyone, and we as of now the remote connection is not even booted, right? So the machine itself is not booted, so you don't have a choice. No one except the in your data centers, who will be the one? The field engineer. Let's say your server is located somewhere in Japan or Singapore or somewhere, right? So the field engineer who is there in the data center, he is the one who is the single user, right? So only he can access it, right? So that's your, or you need to install a chip. If it is a physical server, you have uh, the remote connection can be made, but it is kind of a gray area. Okay, so sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. But the point is, he's the one. He just connect the server to the monitor, and he can restart a machine or do some diagnostic checks and whatever he wants, he can do. Right. So for that machine, he is the single user. For this one, I am the single user. Okay, so that's what called a single user mode, and we will boot to this. Okay, so in maybe in another two sessions, we'll be boot to that one, what it is. And how about init 2? So this is multi-user without network. Okay, so what is multi-user? So firstly, in your Windows, if anyone had an hands-on with the Windows Server, the issue with Windows Server is if you log in with admin, let's say you have a remote connection, you do this MSTSC, you have remote connection, right? So let's say you opened a server, logged in with administrator, and you're working. So simultaneously, let's say one of your colleague logged into the same server with admin. What will happen to your session? It will be automatically terminated. Why? Because by default, Windows doesn't allow multi-user session or multi-sessions. Okay, so for the same admin, you cannot open two sessions at the same time. Okay, so that's a bad thing. There is a workaround. Okay, so it's not like it's impossible, but it doesn't allow natively. That's the issue. Okay, so yeah, and your Linux does solve that, and by default it allows. Let's say you have root account, which is the equal to your admin, right? So now you can open n number of sessions. It doesn't matter. Okay, same root account you can open, it doesn't matter, and it can manage it. Okay, so that's what called as multi-user mode and without network. So basically your Wi-Fi driver or your network driver itself doesn't load. Okay, so that's what called as without network. It's as same as I just shown you the system config, right? So exactly like that. So how about the next one? Exactly the same thing with network, with network drivers. Okay, and init 3 is the common one because it does do the CLI. Even though here also all these are CLI, but it does have the network. Okay, so that's the reason this is called a CLI mode and a common one. Okay, so there is no init 4, it doesn't exist. So init 5, we have X11 or it is called as GUI mode. So even in Linux, you have GUI. It's not like, okay, only CLI is there. Let me just turn on my VM and show you. There is a GUI in your VM, sorry, in your RHEL or any OS as such, but it won't be as pleasing as your Windows, but it does the job, right? So yeah, and yeah, it's a bit slow. One sec. I hope this will be the password. Yeah. So this is the GUI, and this is the start menu, right? So obviously it doesn't have all the features like your Windows, right? So again, you cannot simply go to the Microsoft Store and install some software. Here it is very limited, but it does the job, right? So that's your GUI. And again, it can be a common one if you are as an end user like we do, use that, right? So how about init 6? It is just a reboot. So I can even show you now one day. So if I go to terminal and type init 6, it will reboot automatically. Init 6, enter, it will restart in a minute. Okay. So that's your init 6. So it will perform that restart sequence. Okay. So like that, you have different run levels in your um, servers. Okay. So from init 0 to init 6. So yeah, you see the machine is restarted. Now, fine. So now, yeah, that's your init levels. Let me copy that. And how about the next one, which I mentioned? It is also the same. It is nothing but run levels. So along with this, okay, let me use the font. Yeah. So how about the next one, which is a run level? So a run level, what it does is the same thing from 0 to 6, but the startup program. So let's say you have same HTTP or any such program, it need to be started along with the OS, right? So obviously you need to add it to a certain path. The system doesn't know, right? So it has this one etc init.d, or you can initiate it in this path. There is one more path which is etc rc.d slash rc, which run level it is. Let's say init 3 is what the common one, right? So this is the run level 3. So it's exactly like your startup programs in your Windows. If you go to startup, you have all these programs, right? Let's say Canva or any Skype, right? So all, if I enable this, it will boot along with my OS, exactly like that. This one works, run level. And init.d is the common one where any such software will be placed. Very rarely we use this one, rc.d, and this is a path, by the way. As of now, you might not understand what is etc and all. We will discuss that later, not today, right? So we will discuss that later. Okay. So the next one is obviously that's it. You figured out how to your kernel is booted, right? So The next is which mode are you want to put? Either it is a CLI, GUI, or without network, with network, or it's just a single user. Once you figure that one, your startup programs is figured, and that's it. Your mission will start, right? So that's your. Let me quickly show that in the VM. Okay, so don't worry about this one. I will show the installation part, but just to show you how it works here. Yeah, this is the BIOS screen of your VMware. It's the same Phoenix BIOS. In your case, also it will be the one. And you have the system time and all the basic details and the boot priority order. Here also it will be there. Okay, so this is the boot priority order. Hard drive. And in my case, I have multiple disks. In your case, you have only NVMe. Okay, so yeah. So once you are done, in my case, I didn't add any changes. So once BIOS is done, MBR actually you cannot see that in the screen, and this is your grub screen. So now you might ask, okay, what is the other one? This is called as rescue mode. The other one, right? So this is your actual OS. So what it does here is, you see, Linux, and what is this VM liners? It is nothing but your kernel. This one small file, it is just 20 MB, guys. Okay, so this 20 MB file, it controls the whole system. That's how important it is. And you have this one, init RAM FS. This is a boot image. So this is also being there in this same kernel phase. Along with it, this boot image will also be started. Okay, so enter. So now it is trying to go to the next phase, which is so that is your grub screen. What is the next one? Kernel. So yeah, now the kernel will boot and it will do all the checks whether disk management is done. So once you see that loading screen, click inside, press the down arrow. You will see all this confirmation. Okay, so there is a lot of okay or warning it will show, or it will show as error. Means something is not right in that particular module, right? So from Bluetooth service till your important service, everything it will be showing here. Okay. So once kernel is done, what is the next one? Init phase, right? So yeah, init level, it is a GUI by default. In our case, it is GUI, and yeah, it will take some time for GUI to load. And now you see the lock screen. That's it, right? So all these phases have the one. So any doubts in this one? And I given a very basic examples of this one. So do let me know if you want me to explain it. Any other this one or this one also? Any doubts? It's virtualization, containerization, right? Please do let me know. And yeah, so today's recording also will be posted in the YouTube channel, guys. And this is the payment link for the batch. Okay, so if you're understanding or you are fine with my way of training, and again, all this are theory which you must know. It's not like, okay, only theory part we'll be seeing in Linux. Obviously, no, because it's purely practical sessions we will be doing. I install something, we will uninstall something, we will diagnose, right? So all that. So yeah. Any doubts with the syllabus part or this topic? Anyone? And the YouTube channel, let me quickly show you. And I did explain this in a very elaborative way in our YouTube channel. So let me quickly show you or give the link for that. Okay, so you don't have access to that. One sec. It is in the, you just go through this recording. The syllabus will be discussed in this one, Samira. Okay. Or if you want the PDF version, it is there here. Just go to this drive link. Okay, so if you go to this demo class.pdf, you'll see all the syllabus part. That's a good question. So VMware or VirtualBox, which one? Literally, you can use anything, Saurendra. Okay, so it's not like restricted to use only VMware. I personally use VMware because in our company or anywhere, VMware, if you're understood how it works, right? So you can survey in most of the companies because VirtualBox is for commercial use. Very few companies use that in enterprise, right? So yeah, but you can use anything. You can even use Vagrant or Nutanix or any such tool, just to make sure you have a working real machine. That's what matters. And the installation files, right? So just go to the same drive link. Let me send it once again. Please bookmark this link, guys. Okay, so just go to the installation files. Download this ISO file, rel-8.4.iso. This is the image. Okay, so 8.4 version we are using, and don't worry about it. If you are using or eight, well, like at least 8 version should be there, as I mentioned in yesterday's session. If you use 9.4 also, it doesn't matter. Okay, so you can use that. And if you're having hard time, just right click download. Okay, so that's it. It will initiate the download. Okay, so yeah, and download this one, VMware Workstation Pro 16.2. And what is the system requirement for this one? It's a basic requirement for any system, right? So it's not much. Just you need to have one CPU core available. It's not like um, you're having only 2 cores. It's in most cases it will be 2 cores or 4 core, right? So how to see how many cores of CPU you have? Just go to Task Manager, Performance, CPU. Here you see the core count. In my case, it is 8, which is more than sufficient. So yeah, from this, only one CPU core we'll be using. Okay, so that's your CPU. How about memory? You have, or you can have only 1 gig. It's more than enough. RAM. Okay, and this 20 gigs, at least 20 gigs of disk, and that's it. Okay, so that's the basic system requirement. Okay, so once you downloaded this one, and we will set up in next session. And if you're not having the privilege, why? Because in, let's say you are using some enterprise laptop, your company's laptop, right? So you cannot download or install any such tool. If you have the privilege, you can obviously, right? But in most cases, it will be restricted, right? So in that case, don't worry. We will be seeing how to install in GCP as well as AWS. Okay, so don't worry about it. Just download this ISO on VMware if you are using your personal laptop. Okay, so yeah, and this is the drive link. So inside this drive, installation files. So please make sure you download that one tomorrow. And you need not set up right away along with me. Anyhow, the recordings will be there, right? So you just follow the recording and set up yourself. I will show you how to set it up. Don't worry about it. Okay. And if you're having hard time, I will take a separate one-on-one session I will take the control of your machine and set it up on your behalf. So why I'm making sure that there should be a working lab is, as I mentioned, it is a practical sessions only. So without lab, you cannot do anything, right? So that's the fine. So yeah, it's already time. Any doubts? Anyone? Venkatesh is silent today. Any doubts, Venkatesh? Or all your doubts are sorted yesterday itself? Okay, awesome. So yeah, if you're understood or if you're fine with my way of approach, you can go ahead and join the batch. Okay. So yeah, that's it for the day, guys. Then so let's see in tomorrow's session. So tomorrow we'll be doing the whole session will be the installation part. Okay. So yeah, thanks all then. Have a good one. Tomorrow we'll see at the same time. Thanks for. Bye.